Hey everyone, welcome back to Speak Up, the podcast where we dive into fascinating topics and help you improve your English in the most engaging way possible. Whether you're a first-time listener or a regular, we're so glad you're here. Today's episode is going to be eye-opening to say the least. Imagine living in a place where your every move is watched, where you can't travel freely, and where even speaking your mind could land you in serious trouble. Sounds like something out of a movie, right? Well, for millions of people in North Korea, this is real life. And trust me, the more you learn about it, the more shocking it gets. But before we dive in, let me introduce my co-host, Priya. Priya, are you ready for this?
Oh, absolutely, Ryan. This is a topic that everyone needs to hear about. We live in a world where we can learn English fast, connect with people globally, and express our thoughts freely. But in North Korea, none of that exists. No social media, no free speech, no internet as we know it. Just a strict, controlled system where the government decides everything, from what you wear to what you think. And here's the crazy part. Most North Koreans don't even realize what they're missing out on. Their entire world is shaped by propaganda, and questioning it isn't just dangerous, it's unthinkable. But wait till you hear this. There's a shocking fact about how they control people's lives, and I promise, it'll change the way you see this country forever.
Let's now understand first, a day in North Korea. What's it really like? Imagine waking up in the morning not to an alarm clock or a morning news update, but to government-controlled speakers blasting propaganda messages. This isn't a choice, it's mandatory. Every household has a speaker that starts broadcasting at dawn, and people have no way to turn it off. These broadcasts talk about loyalty to the leader, supposed threats from the outside world, and strict reminders of how people should behave. There's no casual scrolling through social media, no morning coffee while checking emails, just government messages dictating how you should think and act. And once you step outside, it gets even more controlled. Priya, what do you think people would find most shocking about their daily routine?
Oh, Ryan, I think most people will be stunned by how little control North Koreans have over their own lives. Even something as basic as choosing your own clothes is not allowed. The government has approved a limited set of outfits, and people have to wear what's considered appropriate by the state. Jeans? Illegal. Bright, fashionable clothes? Forget about it. Women are often required to wear skirts of a certain length, and men must keep their hair in government-approved styles. And speaking of control, let's talk about food. You would think something as essential as eating would be a personal choice, right? Not in North Korea. Most families rely on a government rationing system, which means they receive a fixed amount of food, often not enough to survive properly. Imagine waking up knowing that your meals for the day depend entirely on what the government decides to give you.
And that's just the morning. After a controlled start to the day, the next step is work. But unlike other countries where people can study hard, learn English fast, and get a job based on their skills, North Koreans have no choice. The government assigns every single person their job, and that's where they work for the rest of their life. No switching careers, no promotions based on performance. And we're not talking about office jobs with benefits. Many people, even young children, are sent to work in factories, farms, or mines under terrible conditions. The workdays are long and exhausting, and missing a single day can get you in serious trouble. And Priya, tell them about the biggest shocker. You don't even get paid properly.
Oh, absolutely. Unlike in other countries where people earn salaries and improve their lifestyles, North Koreans don't even get real money. The government controls the economy so strictly that people are often paid in food rations or coupons instead of actual money. And even if they do get paid, their wages are so low that they can barely afford basic necessities. This forces many people to turn to illegal black markets just to survive. Imagine working all day, only to find out that what you've earned isn't even enough to buy a proper meal. And here's the worst part. If someone is caught complaining about their job or trying to switch without government approval, they can be sent to labor camps. Think about that for a second. You can't choose what to wear, what to eat, or where to work. And if you even question it, you can disappear without a trace. And trust me, the punishments are harsher than you can imagine. But we'll get to that soon.
Let's talk about something that completely shapes life in North Korea: information control. The government decides everything people can see, read, or listen to. There's no social media, no foreign news, and no Google. The internet as we know it doesn't exist. Instead, they have a closed-off, state-controlled network with only a few government-approved websites. People have no access to real history, global news, or even entertainment from other countries. Watching an international news channel or reading an uncensored book is impossible for the average person. And it's not just about keeping people unaware. The government actively enforces these restrictions. Anyone caught trying to access foreign content can face severe punishment. Even a simple conversation about the outside world can be dangerous. Priya, explain how strict they are about something as simple as music.
Listening to foreign songs is considered a crime in North Korea. If someone is caught playing a Western song or K-pop, they can be arrested or even sent to a labor camp. Music, movies, and books are all tightly controlled. People risk their lives to secretly watch a Hollywood film or listen to a foreign song, but if they get caught, the consequences are serious. The government has special teams that monitor homes and check electronic devices to make sure no one is accessing outside content. Even their own entertainment is heavily censored. Local movies and songs must follow strict government guidelines, promoting the leader and the country's ideology. There's no creative freedom. Everything is designed to maintain control over people's thoughts. Ryan, tell them how this affects education, because that's another area where information is strictly controlled.
Education in North Korea is not designed to teach people critical thinking or useful skills. It's mostly about spreading government propaganda. Schools don't focus on real science, world history, or independent thought. Instead, children are taught that their leader is almost like a god and that their country is the greatest in the world. The government even rewrites history to suit its narrative. For example, they teach that their leader invented many modern technologies or that North Korea has never lost a war. Since there's no access to outside information, people grow up believing whatever they are told. But there's an exception. Some people in elite families secretly learn English and receive international education. Priya, explain why this happens and how it's different from the rest of the population.
Yes, this is an interesting part. While most North Koreans are completely cut off from the world, children from elite families are given access to real education, including English. The government needs a small number of people who can communicate with foreigners for diplomatic and business purposes. These privileged students get access to books, international news, and sometimes even foreign teachers. But for the rest of the country, learning English or any foreign language is almost impossible. For most people, even saying a single English word could lead to serious trouble. There are underground networks where some try to learn in secret, but the risks are high. The government sees foreign influence as a threat, and they deal with it harshly.
Food shortages have been a problem in North Korea for decades. The country has faced multiple famines, and even today most people struggle to get enough to eat. The government controls food distribution through a rationing system, but there's never enough to go around. Many families survive on small portions of rice and corn, while meat is considered a luxury that only a few can afford. The situation is worse in rural areas. Farmers work under strict government rules and don't get to keep what they grow. Even in the cities, people line up for hours just to buy basic food items. And when the government runs out of supplies, there's nothing people can do except find other ways to survive. Priya, tell them how people manage to get extra food despite these extreme conditions.
Since the government can't provide enough food, people turn to illegal markets known as jangmadang. These black markets are the only way many families can get extra rice, vegetables, or even small amounts of meat. But trading in these markets is risky. The government sees them as a threat because they operate outside state control. If someone is caught buying or selling food illegally, they could face heavy punishment, including imprisonment. Despite the risks, people have no choice. Some secretly cross the border into China to bring back food, while others barter or trade within their communities. Survival in North Korea isn't about improving English fluency or chasing a better job. It's about finding enough food to last through the day. Ryan, explain how even small changes in weather can make this struggle even worse.
Absolutely. North Korea's food supply depends heavily on agriculture, but the country often faces extreme weather, droughts, floods, and harsh winters that destroy crops. Since they don't import enough food, a bad harvest can mean widespread hunger. Instead of solving the problem, the government prioritizes military spending over feeding its people. Meanwhile, the ruling elite never faces these issues. While ordinary citizens are struggling for basic food, government officials and military leaders have access to imported goods, fine dining, and luxury items. This level of inequality is staggering. Priya, tell them how people adapt to survive when things get really desperate.
When food runs out completely, people are forced to eat whatever they can find. Some gather wild plants or even tree bark to make soup. In the worst times, there have been reports of people eating grass or searching for anything remotely edible. It's heartbreaking to think that millions of people live this way while the leadership enjoys lavish meals. The government doesn't acknowledge the crisis. They continue spreading propaganda saying their country is self-sufficient and prosperous. But the reality is far from that. And the punishments for speaking out against these problems? That's even more terrifying. If someone dares to criticize the government's failure, they risk their lives. People who complain about food shortages, even in private conversations, can be reported by their neighbors or even their own family members. The government runs an intense surveillance system where informants are everywhere. If caught, they could be sent to labor camps where conditions are brutal. Some are even executed publicly to set an example. Even discussing food shortages is considered an act of rebellion. Instead of fixing the problem, the government silences anyone who tries to talk about it. This is how fear controls the people. Hunger is not just a crisis, it's a weapon used to keep them powerless.
Now, let's talk about how traveling is hard. Traveling is something most of us take for granted. We can visit new cities, move to another country for work, or even take a vacation abroad. But in North Korea, even traveling from one town to another is a privilege, not a right. People need official permission to leave their hometowns, and that permission isn't easy to get. The government has checkpoints everywhere. Soldiers stop and question anyone traveling without the proper documents. If someone is caught moving without approval, they can be sent back, punished, or even imprisoned. There's no freedom to explore, no last-minute trips, no spontaneous visits to see family in another city. Priya, explain how this isolation affects people's lives.
It completely controls their worldview. Since people can't travel freely, they only know what the government tells them. They don't get to see different ways of life, meet people from other regions, or experience new things. It's like living in a bubble where the outside world barely exists. And forget about leaving the country. Traveling abroad is nearly impossible. Only a few high-ranking officials and diplomats are allowed to go overseas, and even then, their families are kept in North Korea to make sure they don't run away. For everyone else, the borders are closed. No vacations, no study programs, no job opportunities outside. And if someone even thinks about escaping, the consequences are beyond terrifying. Ryan, tell them about the people who try to run away.
Trying to escape from North Korea is one of the riskiest things a person can do. The country has some of the strictest border security in the world. Guard towers, electric fences, landmines, everything is designed to keep people trapped inside. Soldiers are ordered to shoot anyone who tries to cross without permission. And even if someone manages to escape, the danger doesn't end there. Many who flee try to reach South Korea, but the journey is brutal. Some cross into China first, hoping to find safety. But here's the problem. China doesn't grant them asylum. If Chinese authorities catch a North Korean refugee, they send them back, knowing they'll face severe punishment. Priya, tell them what happens to those who are caught.
The punishments are horrifying. People who are caught escaping, or even planning to escape, are sent to prison camps. These camps are some of the worst places in the world, with brutal forced labor, starvation, and abuse. Some prisoners never make it out alive. And it's not just the person who tries to escape. Their entire family can be punished. If one person runs away, their parents, siblings, even distant relatives could be arrested and sent to these camps. The government does this to spread fear. They want people to believe that no matter how bad life is, Trying to leave is even worse. But the extreme control doesn't stop there. Wait until you hear how North Koreans are taught to worship their leader like a god.
In most countries, leaders are respected or criticized based on their actions. But in North Korea, their leader isn't just a political figure. He's treated like a god. From the moment a child is born, they are taught that the leader is their protector, their savior, and the most important person in their lives. It starts early. Kids in school don't just learn math and science. They memorize stories about the leader's so-called miracles. They're told that he can control the weather, that he never makes mistakes, and that their country is the greatest in the world because of him. These stories are repeated daily, and questioning them is unthinkable. Priya, tell them how this leader worship affects everyday life.
It affects everything. Every home must have portraits of the leader, and those portraits must be kept spotless. If a fire breaks out, people are expected to save the leader's picture before their own family members. Imagine that. A parent choosing a framed photo over their child because the government demands it. Every citizen is required to bow to the leader's statues and celebrate his birthday as if it were a religious holiday. There are massive parades, synchronized performances, and endless propaganda that reinforces his image as a divine figure. Even newspapers print his name in bold, unbreakable ink, so that no one can fold or throw away a paper with his name on it. Doing so could be seen as an act of disrespect, leading to serious punishment. And it doesn't stop there. People are encouraged to spy on their own friends and family. If someone is heard criticizing the leader, even in private, they can be reported by their own children or neighbors. Ryan, what happens if someone dares to speak against him?
The consequences are terrifying. Even the smallest sign of disrespect, like not looking excited enough during a parade, can get someone into trouble. There are reports of people being sent to prison camps just for making a joke about the leader. Others have been publicly executed for allegedly showing disloyalty. This isn't just about control. It's about creating fear so strong that people don't even allow themselves to think negatively about the government. In North Korea, loyalty isn't a choice. It's survival. In most countries, people can criticize their government, debate politics, and express their opinions freely. But in North Korea, even thinking about questioning the leadership is dangerous. From the moment they are born, North Koreans are taught that their leader is not just a ruler. He is a godlike figure who must be worshipped without question. Every home has portraits of the supreme leader, and it's mandatory to keep them clean and in perfect condition. If a fire breaks out in your house, your first priority isn't to save your family. It's to save these portraits. People bow to statues of their leader, memorize his speeches, and celebrate his birthday like a national holiday. Priya, tell them how this loyalty is forced onto people from a young age.
It starts in childhood. Schools don't just teach math and science, they teach children to obey the government and love their leader. Every morning, kids pledge loyalty, thanking their leader for everything, even the food they eat. But here's the scariest part. Children are encouraged to spy on their own parents. Teachers tell kids that if their parents say anything negative about the government, they must report them. And if a child does this, their parents can be arrested or worse. Imagine the kind of fear this creates. No one knows who they can trust, not even their own family. Ryan, explain what happens if someone refuses to follow these strict rules.
The consequences are brutal. People have been arrested for things as small as not bowing deeply enough to a leader's statue or not displaying the required level of emotion during a public event. In some cases, entire families disappear overnight because someone was accused of showing disrespect. And it's not just about actions. What you say matters too. In many parts of the world, people practice English listening exercises to improve their skills. But in North Korea, people practice listening to propaganda every day. News, radio, and even entertainment are controlled by the government, repeating the same messages over and over. Priya, tell them about the extreme punishments people face if they don't show complete loyalty.
Punishments are terrifying. Some people are sent to prison camps for simply not crying enough at a leader's funeral. Others are executed publicly as a warning to everyone else. There have even been cases where officials were punished in the most bizarre ways, like one man who was reportedly executed for falling asleep during a meeting. The government uses fear to control people. There's no room for independent thought, no space to question authority. And what's even more shocking, many North Koreans don't even realize they're being controlled because they've never known anything different. But what happens when someone does start to see the truth? It's one of the most dangerous things that can happen to a North Korean. If someone begins to doubt the government, they can never express it openly. They have to keep their thoughts hidden, even from their own family, because saying the wrong thing could lead to their arrest. Or worse. Some who secretly listen to foreign radio broadcasts or smuggle in information from the outside world begin to realize that they've been lied to their whole lives. At first, many refuse to believe it. The idea that everything they were taught about their leader, their country, and the outside world was false is overwhelming. But once the truth starts to sink in, there's no going back. These individuals face an impossible choice: pretend they still believe and live in fear every day, or take the ultimate risk: escape. And that's why, despite all the dangers, some North Koreans still try to flee. They know that if they stay, they will never be free. But escaping means putting everything on the line, including their family's safety. It's a heartbreaking reality. And for many, there is no easy way out.
Now, in the end, let's talk about something that might surprise you. The hidden elite, a different life for the privileged few. Not everyone in North Korea lives under the same extreme restrictions. There's a small, privileged group, mostly people connected to the government, who live a very different life from the rest of the population. These elites have access to luxuries that most North Koreans can't even dream of. While the majority struggle to find enough food, the elite enjoy imported goods, fine dining, and even access to entertainment from the outside world. They live in the capital, Pyongyang, in special neighborhoods with better housing, reliable electricity, and even modern shopping centers. But there's something even more surprising. Some of them secretly learn English. Priya, tell them how that's even possible in a country with such strict control over information.
Despite the government's efforts to block outside influences, some elites find ways to connect with the world beyond North Korea's borders. They have access to restricted schools where foreign languages like English are taught, not for travel or career opportunities, but for intelligence, diplomacy, and business with other countries. Some even hire private English tutors in secret. Unlike the rest of the population, who have no way to improve English fluency or even know what's happening outside their country, these privileged few get glimpses of real news, foreign music, and even Western films smuggled in from China or South Korea. But here's the catch. Even for them, one mistake could cost them everything. Ryan, explain why their position is still so dangerous.
Exactly. Even though they live in luxury, they are constantly being watched. If an elite is caught secretly watching a foreign movie, reading banned material, or speaking out against the government, they can lose everything in an instant. Some are sent to prison camps, others are stripped of their privileges and forced to live like ordinary citizens. This means that even the wealthiest North Koreans live in fear. No one is truly safe. And that's the reality of North Korea, a country where survival depends on obedience, and where even the elite must be careful about every word they say, every book they read, and every person they associate with.
This brings us to the end of today's episode. North Korea remains one of the most secretive and controlled places in the world, where everyday life is shaped by fear, propaganda, and extreme restrictions. We hope this discussion gave you a deeper understanding of what people there go through every day.
Thank you for spending your time with us today. If you found this episode insightful, don't forget to share it with others who might be interested in learning about the world beyond what we usually see in the news. Stay curious, keep learning, and we'll see you in the next episode of Speak Up. Take care.